In a world where headlines are often filled with noise and chaos, sometimes a quiet act of honor speaks louder than anything else. This is the story of a fallen Marine and the brotherhood that refused to let him go out like just another package in the mail. This is the journey of Staff Sergeant Jonathan Turner, a Marine, a hero, and a son, whose ashes were destined to be shipped across the country, until a gang of leather-clad angels roared to life and said, "Not on our watch." Jonathan Turner was a fighter from the beginning. Raised with a sense of purpose and a heart full of grit, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and spent the next 17 years of his life serving his country. 7 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, countless days and nights on the battlefield, and every time, he came home. To his mother, Annie Glant, Jonathan was more than just a Marine. He was her only child, her pride, her heartbeat. She watched him go off to war again and again, holding on to hope and prayers each time he left. When Jonathan finally retired, it was a moment of bittersweet joy. He had made it through, but life had scattered them. Annie lived in Georgia, and Jonathan settled in California. Though they were separated by 2,000 miles, they stayed close through phone calls, video chats, and messages that kept their bond alive. Like many veterans, Jonathan carried invisible scars. The physical toll of war haunted him. Hospital visits became frequent. Pain became a constant companion. But through it all, he found therapy in the roar of a motorcycle. Jonathan joined the Patriot Guard Riders, a group of veterans who honored fallen soldiers with motorcycle processions. The open road became his refuge, a place where he could breathe again. Among the riders, he found peace, purpose, and brotherhood. But one night, the pain surged beyond what his body could bear. Alone in his California home, Jonathan called 911. Paramedics arrived and did everything they could. At the hospital, doctors fought to keep him alive. But this battle, Jonathan didn't win. He passed quietly, far from home. And just like that, the world lost a quiet hero. Annie was devastated. She didn't just lose her son, she lost the center of her world. And what made it worse? She couldn't afford to fly to California. She couldn't see him one last time. She couldn't even be there for his cremation. It broke her heart all over again. The military took care of the cremation, honoring Jonathan's wishes. His ashes were placed in a simple container to be shipped to Annie via FedEx. It was efficient, practical, but it felt wrong. Staff Sergeant Jonathan Turner had given his life in service to his country, and now his final journey was going to be a tracking number in a shipping database. But then something happened. One of Jonathan's friends, a fellow biker and Patriot Guard rider, heard about the plan to send his ashes through the mail. His gut reaction? Hell no. And the rest of the group, they agreed. This wasn't just about ashes. This was about respect, brotherhood, dignity. So they made a bold decision. They would carry Jonathan home themselves, all 2,000 miles of it. With American flags flying from their bikes, leather jackets zipped tight, and hearts full of purpose, the Patriot Guard Riders launched an extraordinary mission, a relay of honor. From California to Georgia, through deserts, mountains, and plains, they rode. At each state line, they passed the ashes from one group of bikers to the next, not like a handoff, but like a sacred torch. There were no news cameras, no glory, just solemn ceremonies, salutes, silence, and the thunder of engines rolling in unity. In Arizona, in New Mexico, in Texas, in Arkansas, all across the country. Ordinary Americans stood along the roads, waving flags and bowing heads as the procession passed. People stopped what they were doing. They watched, they cried. Because this was different. Annie watched the entire journey unfold through live streams and updates from the road. She saw strangers, hundreds of them, honoring her son, not just for his military service, but for the man he was, the man they loved, and her grief, while still heavy, began to feel less lonely. When she received a phone call from one of the bikers informing her that they were bringing Jonathan to her, personally, with no cost, no question, she broke down in tears. They told her, "You don't owe us anything. He earned this." When the riders finally pulled into Georgia, the streets were lined with people, neighbors, veterans, strangers who had followed the journey online. Flags flew at half-mast, Children waved, grown men stood in silent salute. At the front of the line was the lead biker, carrying the urn with Jonathan's ashes. He approached Annie, his weathered face softened with emotion. "Are you Annie Turner?" he asked gently. She nodded through her tears. "This is your son," he said, handing her the urn like it was the most sacred thing he'd ever held. And in that moment, amid the rumble of engines and the quiet sobs of onlookers, Annie felt peace, not because her pain had vanished, but because she knew Jonathan had been honored the way he deserved. What started as a silent gesture of respect grew into a national movement. The story of the Patriot Guard riders escorting Jonathan's remains went viral. Radio stations shared it. News outlets picked it up. Donations flooded in from people who wanted to help. Messages poured in from other veterans, from Gold Star families, from everyday citizens. Jonathan Turner's final journey reminded people what honor looks like, what brotherhood means, and how powerful it is when people show up, even for someone they've never met. In a world that often forgets its heroes once the uniforms are folded away, a group of bikers said, "We remember." They didn't let Jonathan go out quietly. They roared him home, 1 mile at a time, with love, loyalty, and the thunder of 2,000 wheels. Would you have joined them? Because in that moment, they didn't just carry a fallen Marine. They carried the soul of a nation that still knows how to honor its own. Rest easy, Staff Sergeant Turner. You were never alone.